You keep meeting different people, different names, different faces, different stories, but somehow it always ends the same way. Same arguments, same dynamic, same pain. You tell yourself it's bad luck, that you just haven't met the right person yet, that maybe there's something wrong with the people you attract. But what if it's not luck? What if it's a pattern? And what if that pattern has a very specific source, one that is started long before you ever had your first relationship? Because here's the truth that most people never find out. You don't attract the same type of person by accident. You recognize them. And today, we're going to break down exactly why and what it actually takes to stop. In this video, you're going to understand the psychological mechanism behind repetitive relationship patterns, why your nervous system keeps choosing the wrong people even when your mind knows better, and what the actual path out of this cycle looks like. This isn't about blaming your past, it's about understanding it, so it stops running your present. Welcome to MindFrame Lab, where we decode the hidden forces behind human behavior. Let's start with the most important thing to understand. Your brain is not looking for what's good for you. It's looking for what feels familiar. And familiar doesn't mean safe. It doesn't mean healthy. It just means recognizable. Think about it this way. From the moment you were born, your brain was building a model of the world, a model of what love looks like, what relationships feel like, how people treat each other. And that model was built from what you experienced, not from what's ideal. If you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where affection came and went depending on someone's mood, your nervous system learned that this is what love is. Unpredictable. Something you have to earn, something that can be taken away. If you grew up around someone who was emotionally unavailable, always a little distant, a little cold, a little hard to reach, your brain registered that as the baseline. That's what closeness looks like. So now, as an adult, when you meet someone who is consistent, warm, and emotionally present, something feels off. It feels too easy, too calm, too good to be true. But when you meet someone who is a little distant, a little hard to read, a little unpredictable, something inside you lights up. Not because they're right for you, because they feel like home. And that distinction between what feels good and what feels familiar is one of the most important things you'll ever learn about yourself. Psychologists have a name for this pattern. They call it your attachment style, and it was formed in the first few years of your life, long before you could analyze it, question it, or choose differently. Attachment theory, originally developed by John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth, tells us that the way our earliest caregivers responded to our needs creates a template, a blueprint for how we relate to others in every close relationship that follows. If your caregivers were consistently available, responsive when you cried, present when you needed them, warm and predictable, you likely developed a secure attachment. You grew up feeling that the world is safe, that people can be trusted, that love doesn't have to be earned. But if your caregivers were inconsistent, sometimes warm and loving, other times cold, distracted, or emotionally unavailable, something different happened. You developed what psychologists call an anxious attachment style. And here's what anxious attachment does. It makes you hyper-focused on the emotional state of the people you love. You become an expert at reading moods, at sensing distance, at anticipating withdrawal. Because as a child, your survival, your sense of safety, depended on keeping that connection alive. So you learned to chase, to perform, to make yourself as lovable as possible in order to keep someone close. And you carried that strategy into adulthood. Now, as an adult, the person who is consistently available doesn't trigger that system. There's nothing to chase, nothing to earn. And so it feels flat, boring, like something's missing. But the person who runs hot and cold, who makes you work for their attention, who leaves you wondering where you stand, your brain lights up. The chase begins. And you mistake that activation, that anxiety, that obsession for chemistry. It's not chemistry. It's a wound you've learned to call love. Here's where it gets even more interesting, and honestly, more difficult to argue with. Attraction isn't just psychological, it's neurological. When you're in an unpredictable relationship, one where you're never quite sure where you stand, your brain activates a dopamine response similar to what happens in gambling. Think about a slot machine. It doesn't pay out every time. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And that unpredictability, that variable reward schedule, is exactly what makes it so addictive. Your brain releases dopamine not when it gets the reward, but in anticipation of maybe getting it. The same thing happens when someone is inconsistent with you, when they're warm one day and cold the next, when they text back immediately sometimes and go silent for days other times. Your brain isn't annoyed by this. It's activated by it. It's scanning for patterns. It's trying to figure out what to do to get the warmth back. It's flooded with dopamine every time that person finally reaches out. And so you become addicted, not to the person, but to the pattern. This is why smart, self-aware people end up in the same toxic cycles over and over again. It's not a character flaw. It's not weakness. It's neuroscience. You can know with absolute certainty that someone is wrong for you and still feel like you can't let go, because your nervous system is hooked on the chemical loop that relationship has created. And here's the painful part. The healthy relationship, the one that's consistent and stable and actually good for you, that one doesn't create the... So what do you actually do with this? The first step, and this sounds simple, but it isn't, is to learn to tell the difference between excitement and anxiety. Because in the body, they feel almost identical. Elevated heart rate, heightened attention, a kind of electric alertness. When you're drawn to someone, it's hard to know, is this genuine connection, or is this my nervous system recognizing a familiar kind of danger? The question to ask yourself is this: does this person make me feel safe, or do they make me feel needed? Do I feel at ease around them, or am I always slightly on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop? Real love, healthy love, doesn't feel like a roller coaster. It doesn't feel like you have to manage the other person's moods. It doesn't feel like you're auditioning for a role you might lose at any moment. It feels like safety, like being fully yourself and being accepted, like not having to perform or shrink or earn your place. And if that description sounds boring to you, if that sounds like settling, I want you to sit with that, because that reaction is information. It's telling you something about what your nervous system has been taught to call love. The second step is to start tolerating the discomfort of the unfamiliar. Because when you start choosing differently, when you start letting in people who are actually consistent and kind, it will feel wrong at first. Your nervous system will push back. It will tell you there's no spark, no chemistry, no excitement. That discomfort is not a sign that something is missing. It's a sign that something is healing. And the third step is to understand that this work takes time. It doesn't happen because you read one article or watch one video. It happens through repeated experience of something different, through slowly teaching your nervous system that calm is safe, that consistency is real, that you don't have to earn love. That's not a quick process, but it starts with understanding what's actually happening. You came into this video asking why you always attract the same type of person. Now you know the answer. You're not attracting them. You're recognizing them. Your nervous system is scanning every room for a feeling it already knows. And when it finds it, it calls it love. The work isn't about finding different people. It's about becoming someone who can feel safe with someone safe. Someone whose nervous system doesn't need the chaos to feel alive. That work is hard. It's uncomfortable. And it's some of the most important work you'll ever do. If this video hit close to home, if something in here described a pattern you've been living, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because this is the kind of thing nobody explains to you. And understanding it is the first real step toward changing it. Follow MindFrame Lab for more, because understanding yourself is the beginning of everything.